Hello friends, welcome to the video tutorial of ASP.NET MVC 5, and from this video we are going to start the implementation of authentication and authorization process. You can also call it as role-based security. In the last introductory video of authentication and authorization, we just understand the process of it using activity diagram, as well as we saw some terms related to it. Okay, so if you are not familiar with that part, please watch the introductory video of authentication and authorization. Now this video will cover how to create form authentication ticket and form authentication cookie. So definitely we are going to accept a credential from user and we will validate it against the data stored in our database. Now for that we are going to use the concept of entity framework. Again, if you are not familiar with that part, please watch the video of entity framework. So let us revise our activity diagram once again, and let me tell you which part we are going to cover here. So first of all, we will accept the credential from the user. So for that we need to create one view, okay, and also we need one controller to accept that request, as well as we need login view model. Then after using entity framework, we are going to validate that credential against the credentials stored in our database. Then after we are going to create a form authentication ticket. Then we will encrypt it, and then we will add that authentication cookie. Then we will add that authentication ticket to our cookie. So these 4 steps I am going to cover in this video. Later part will be covered in consecutive videos. So let us see this process step by step. So let us have a look to our SQL Server database. Here I created a MyDB database and it has users table. This table has following columns, that is username, password, name, contact, email and role name, as well as all the fields are of type varchar. And here I created 2 users also, and I fill the information. Okay, now let us take a view to our entity data model. So here I already created one MVC application named as role-based security. Okay, then I added one folder for data models which will hold our entity data model. Using entity framework database first approach, I created this location entity data model. Okay, this MyDB entities is my DB context class, and this user is my table. Actually, in my database there are 3 tables: areas, cities and users. So I just selected the user table because I want to perform the operation on user table only. So you can have a look to our ADMX file. Look at here. Okay, now here I created view models also. One is login view model, which has 2 fields, username and password. This login view model will be used to accept a credential from the users. And the another one is user view model, which has following properties: name, username, contact and email, as well as role name. Okay, so after validating the user against the credential, whatever user data I'll get, I'm going to store it in user view model. And as you can see here, I didn't create a 3-tier architecture, but just to give an effect of that, what I did, I created separate folders for that. Okay, now the first step is to create user repository. Okay, so in that user repository, what we are going to do, we are going to write a code to validate the user against the login view model. Okay, because our login view model contains the username and password. So let us have a look to this. Look at here, this is our login view model. It has username and password, 2 fields. Okay, so we will accept this login view model, and from that what we will return? We will return user view model, which will contain following information. So let us write that validate method. Even you can implement a repository also. So time being I am directly writing the code here. Otherwise the implementation of repository is always already explained in repository pattern video series. So you can watch that video for your reference. So here let me create one validate method. So public. So as I said, it is going to return user view model. So my return type will be user view model. Okay, actually it is not present here, so I have to import that namespace. Okay, it get imported. Now validate method, and to that validate method I am going to pass login view model. So let us say model. Okay, now the next part is whatever there in my login view model, I want to validate it against my database. So for that we created data models, and there is location entity data model, and my database context class name is mydb entity. So let us create an object of it. So currently we are going to have this single method only. That's why I'm going to create this object in my validate method. If you have multiple methods to interact with your database, you can create object at class level instead of at method level. So let me import that namespace also. Okay, it is in data models namespace. So here I have to say using role-based security. This is the name of our application, and then data models. So here I'll say mydb entities db is equal to new mydb entities. Okay, now the next step is to fetch a record that will match with the username and with a password that we provided inside this login view model. So here I'll say db dot users. This users is a db set property in our db context class, which is in mydb entities. See, look at here, this is the property, users property. Okay, so db dot users dot, here we have to put a where criteria, because we are going to find two fields. Okay, if you are going to find the data on a primary key, in that case find method is used. Otherwise, if you are finding a record on some other criteria, in that case you have to use where method. To that where method I have to provide an object of user. Okay, and in the form of lambda expression I have to specify my condition. So u goes to u dot username is equal to model dot username. Okay, so accepted credentials are in this model and database content are in u object. If it is equal to model dot username, as well as we want to compare the database password with our model password. So model dot password. Okay, so basically if you look at here, see what this where method does. Where method returns iQueryable collection. What where method does? Where method returns iQueryable collection. Means it do not return a single object. What it returns? It returns a collection. So what will I do? Again I will call one more method, that is first or default. So what this method does, it will gives me only the first record in that collection. And what is the meaning of default? If it does not present, in that case it will return null. So where method is returning a collection of user, whereas first or default method is returning only user. So let me declare the object of user. So my object name is obj. But what I am going to return? I am going to return user view model. So what I have to do? I have to convert this object to user view model. So first of all we will check whether match is found or not. If it is found, then object is not equal to null. Object is not equal to null. And if it is not found, in that case object value will be null. So this is our object. Okay, now here I'll create one object of user view model. So let us say user model is equal to new user model, and then assign the required properties. Okay, so as you can see here, we want to store username name, contact, email and roll number. If you want to store password also, you can store it. So I'm not going to store it. I'm not going to store password. So user model dot username is equal to obj dot username. So I hope you got this, because we are converting it from the data model to the view model, and we already saw this concept in the repository design pattern. So if you are not familiar with that part, please watch that video. The name is equal to obj dot name, then user model dot contact is equal to obj dot contact, then user model dot email is equal to obj dot email, and then after I'll return this user model. And if obj is null, in that case also I have to return what? Null. Okay, so here we created the repository, and in that data access layer part we add our data access logic. Okay, now we're done with this part. Now what is the next step? Next step is the presentation layer. So what will I do? I will just close this part. Okay, our view models are already ready. As I told you, there is a login view model which is accepting username and password from user. Then this is user view model, okay, and which is accepting, not accepting, it is storing the details of a user. Okay, so mistakenly I show you the details of user. Actually this is our user view model, right? Name, username, contact, email and roll number. Now here I already created an account controller, okay, and as well as I created the login method also, and I created a login view also. So as you can see, quite easy, right? We already saw this in our authorize attribute video. Using this strongly type HTML helper, I created this view and I created this form, and there is a model declaration also. So this is strongly type view which is binded to your login view model. So whenever I click on my submit button, okay, login post method will be called, and using complex model binding technique I am collecting the details. Okay, so that's why I declare this argument here. Now what is the first step? When you got your data in your post method, what you will do? You will give call to the validate method that we just created in our user repository. Okay, so user repository is there in my DAL folder. So let me import that namespace. So using role based security dot DAL. Okay, so let us create an object of user repository. So user repository, say repo user is equal to new user repository, and let us give call to validate method. Now validate method is returning an object of type user view model. Okay, so what I have to do, I have to declare it also. Okay, it is present in data models namespace, so let me import that namespace also. So using role based security dot data models, sorry, not in data models, actually it is in models, extremely sorry, it is in models. So what I have to say? Models. Okay, now let me create an object of user view model. Let us say model is equal to repo user dot validate, and to that validate method what will I do? I'll pass this login view model, because what is it accepting? It is accepting the login view model. Okay, now we will do one more thing here. We will first of all check whether our model is valid or not. Now what happened here? Actually this is also model and this is also model. Let me specify it as user model. Okay, first of all we should check whether the accepted model is valid or not, because we are using complex model binding. So using if model state dot is valid. Okay, and if it is not valid, what we are going to do? We are going to display the error message in validation summary. So for that what I have to do? model state dot add model error. So this is model level error. So keep first field empty and display the error message that invalid data. Okay. Now here, what is your validate method is doing? It first of all match the credential that you have given, and if it is found, it will return user view model, and if it is not found, it is returning null. So here also what we will check? We will check whether our user model is not equal to null or not. If it is not equal to null, then only we are going to create authentication ticket. And if it is null, what it means? It means we have created, we have given invalid credential. So again, let us display that error message in validation summary. So here I'll say invalid credentials. Okay, and here also. Okay, now here first of all we are going to create forms authentication ticket. Okay, and for that we need system.web.security namespace. So let me add it. So using system.web.security. So actually why we are going to create a forms authentication ticket? Basically there is one method of form authentication class which is set authentication cookie, and if you read the description of it, look at here, what it does, it creates an authentication ticket for a supplied username and add it to the cookies collection of the response. Okay, using supplied cookie path or using URL if you are using cookieless authentication. Okay, so basically if you are using set auth cookie method, okay, it is creating that authentication ticket for you. It will add that ticket to a cookie. Okay, whatever cookie path you have supplied, whether URL or a normal cookie. But here, if you read it here carefully, form authentication ticket for supplied username only means if you use this set auth cookie method, it can store username only. And what I want to store? I want to store some extra information about the user, not just the username. I want to store his email also. I want to store his contact number also. I want to store the name of user also. Okay, so I want to store this much things. That's why we are going to create this process manually. Means first of all we are going to create form authentication ticket, then we will encrypt it, and then after we will add it to our form authentication cookie. So let us create an object of form authentication ticket. Form authentication ticket, let us call our object as ticket is equal to new forms authentication ticket. So basically we are going to use a constructor of this. So as you can see here, first we are going to use this overload. Okay, this second overload where we have to supply the version, the name, issue date, expiration time, whether we want to create it is persistent or temporary, and as well as we have to provide the user data also. And user data is nothing but the information that we want to store about the user, which is in our user view model. Okay, our user information is in user view model. It is class, whereas this information is in the form of what? String. Okay, so first of all what we will do, we will create a string of our user view model data. Okay, and then we will complete this part. So let me skip this. Currently it will show you an error, but we will complete it later. So here let me create one variable of type string user data is equal to string.format. So what information I am going to store? Name, then contact number, then email, and then role name. Okay, and then after I'll pass this information in this placeholder. So our data will appear or will be collected in this user model. So user model dot name, comma, user model dot contact number, comma, user model dot email, comma, user model dot role name. Okay, so what I did, I just used string dot format function. Otherwise I have to use that concatenation operator, that is plus, and it looks very complicated and very tough to understand. So that's why I use string dot format method. So for that method, what we have to do, we have to just pass the placeholder. So in place of 0, and placeholders are generally enclosed in curly braces, and in place of placeholder these values will appear. Each and every value is separated by vertical pipe. Okay. Now what will I do? I'll just add one more field because we didn't store username, and it might required in subsequent request. So let me create one more placeholder, and first of all I'll say user model dot username. Okay, so at first position there will be username, then vertical pipe, then just name, again vertical pipe, then contact, vertical pipe email, and vertical pipe role name. So we converted our data into a string. Now let us complete this constructor. So as I told you, we are going to use this second overload. Okay, here you have to give just version, it can be anything, let us say 1. Then you have to give a name to it. So what will I do? I'll just specify the username to this. Then second is issue date. So let us say date time dot now. So current date and current time will be our issue date, and expiration time will be, say, date time dot date time dot now dot add minutes 10. So this will be my expiration date. Now next is whether I want to create a persistent ticket or not. So I'll say false. And then after my user data, so my user data is in my user data variable. Okay, you can create a different variable also. Now according to our activity diagram, what is the next step? Next step is to encrypt your ticket. Next step is to encrypt your ticket. Now to encrypt your ticket, again there is one ready-made method of your forms authentication class. So you have to say forms authentication dot encrypt. Okay, and to this method what we have to give? We have to provide an object of form authentication ticket, and what it returns? It returns string. Okay, so what is a form authentication ticket object? It is ticket. Okay, now let us collect it in one string because it is returning string. So say ENC ticket, encrypted ticket, right? Now next step is to add this ticket to your form authentication cookie. So what will I do? I'll just create one cookie here. So HTTP cookie. Okay, so cookie is equal to new HTTP cookie, and here you have to specify the cookie name and then its value. So what will be the value of our cookie? Value of our cookie will be this encrypted ticket. Okay, it is also in string format and it is also accepting the argument of type string. Then here you can specify again any name, but again I am going to use the property of my forms authentication class, which is authentication. 1 minute. So we are going to use this property forms cookie name. Really you can specify any name, but it should be of type string. So here it will assign its own name. Generally it is auth ASPX. Okay, we will debug it, then you will understand it. So this is our cookie name. As I told you, it can be any name. It can be XYZ, PQR, or suppose you want to give your name, you can mention it. Now next is value, which is our encrypted ticket. So form authentication cookie is created. What it contains? It contains the form authentication ticket. And what forms authentication ticket contains? It contains your own data. So whatever steps are there in our set auth cookie method, all we have implemented here. Just one step is remain. We have to say response dot cookies dot add. We have to add this cookie. Okay, so I hope you understand this process. Okay, now what we will do, we will redirect to our home controller's index page. If everything is done, means if your credentials are valid, what we did, we created a ticket, we then encrypted that ticket and we added that ticket in our cookie. Now next step, we want to redirect to our home controller's index page or any dashboard that you have created. So here I'll say return, redirect to action, index method of my home controller. Okay, now in next video, what we will see, how to collect that cookie, how to decrypt it, and how to assign it to our principal object. And for that we have to create, or we have to implement our custom principal class from our iPrincipal interface. So all the things will be covered in the second part.